Everyone to the presentation. This is January 11th, 2021, year one. Hey, HP, thanks for joining the stream. I'm actually going to share your your message right out of the gate. You couldn't have timed it any better. I actually have that is going to be part of the intro today, guys, is that I have a message to share that HP, one of my patrons, gave me some permission to share because it was a great question regarding faction allegiance, essentially, is what it boils down to, pertaining to the Templars. I wanted to start off with some clarification on that. So thanks for joining the stream, HB. Hey, Jay Farmer, how are you? Good to have Zaralath in here too. What we're going to be talking about today is year one topics. As everybody is probably familiar with, especially if you're not new to the channel, as I always kind of say, right? If you are new to the channel, you can always go to my Patreon channel over here, my Patreon page for Skullcap Savant, same name that you're finding me on here on Twitter. You can scroll down and you can go through the latest videos I've been covering about the Aryan roots of humanity, truly ever since this post right here, which is also free on Theta, believe it or not. If you go over to my videos, if you're watching this on Theta, you can go to my Theta channel, and I do have some Patreon videos that you can sample over here. I've started to pepper Theta with my older ones even, just to get you a sample. But this one here, the New Jerusalem and Earth's Hidden Destiny, and the Scottish Dug Riddle and Serpent, they seem to be even censoring my posting platform of choice for Patreon from those videos. So not only are they not okay for YouTube, but they won't upload anywhere except for Theta. These topics, I think, run deep. The symbolism that we're talking about, I speculate, has a lot to do with what the world's reset scenario is that we're living through right now. But again, if you go educate yourself on these couple videos over here on Theta, you'll get a better explanation. You'll get some holes because it's not all the videos that you'll find over on Patreon. But you can actually, just if you want to subscribe to the lowest level of Patreon, $3 is all it takes to get access to the videos. So you can read through the other benefits of the higher tiers, but I don't gate any of the videos or the content creation behind it. But moving on from that a little bit, this is why we're talking about year one in a context that I'm going to be talking about today. In those last presentations, we've arrived at some conclusions around the Templars. The Templars are giving us certain symbology. It would seem that they are the ones doing it because of the signature that we've decoded that's latent to it, and that they're telling us something of, hey, Sonic Alchemy, glad you made it in. They're telling us something of an explanation as to how things got the way they are on the planet Earth right now, and what the answers are potentially to get out of it. Okay, so it's really important for us to understand our past, as anybody really with white skin, as we're also determining, and dominant, white Caucasian traits, Anglo-Saxon traits, I guess, whatever you want to put it, however you want to put it. We have Aryan blood largely in our ancestry. And of course, I'm going to dive in a little bit more to the secrets of the Serpent Bloodline book today at points in the broadcast to show people what this is all about from Dao Tia's perspective, who is a Templar. But the question had arisen, therefore, because we're getting to the bottom of this, and it would seem that the Templars are leaving us these clues. Well, what is their motivation? Kind of thing is what HP had asked me. So I did. I asked her permission if I could share this, and she's here on the Theta stream too, so people can say hi to her. But regarding the question, this is what she posed to me. She said, absolutely. She answered me from a previous thread. It says, of course. But she said, I saw after I sent you this message, he is aware of you. We're talking about another content creator she found on Float, essentially. He'd posted Corey's presentation, was reaching out because of his statements seemed to contradict your take on it, and it being the Templars. So in essence, here's the setup. The HP found another creator over on Float who likes this V-steganography research quite a bit, as it turns out. But he may, after some quick study of his perspective on things, he may not look as completely as we do over in the V-Cipher community at the perspectives that are at the heart of this. I've always talked about the Templar-Jesuit War being much like the Jedi and Sith War from Star Wars. That's kind of the corollary that we have to ground ourselves in. There's, excuse me, sorry about that. Plenty of myth to Star Wars rather matches up with mythology in such a way to suggest that it's constructed just in this manner, right? And so where I've even, I think, spoken of in the past in the Templars being a quote unquote force of good, that doesn't mean that they themselves necessarily are like the good guys. I hope this makes sense, guys. The world is out of balance right now in a way that's chaotic. Templars want to restore order, but order to them means balance. Order to the Jesuits means control, right? So order simply means two different things to the two different factions of the Jesuits and the Jedi. And again, it gets way more complex when you start looking at how many factions are within factions. It's not just one versus the other, but the whole endeavor, therefore, is to enact forces of good because there's so much evil. We've talked Wetico in the past on the Patreon channel, right? I think all the patrons are pretty familiar with the concept of Wetico and its prevalence on the earth right now. And to strike that out, we have to actually face it. And unlocking the Merkaba, the Christ consciousness, which is that force for good to unlock in humanity, to all resonate at once, okay? And the reason why we have to be this force for good is to balance. It's the yin and the yang. You're never going to rid the universe of Wetico. You'd be a fool for trying. You cannot eradicate evil. Those are the rules that we play by coming here. That's not to say that you'll never get away from evil outside the realm of materium that you're existing in right now, but those aren't the rules here, okay? So the Templars, they have all of these knowings themselves, the ancient knowledge. We're going to get into this stuff really quickly after HP's question and answer here, but that's the setup. The guy here seems to think Templars bad, just kind of like you would get brainwashed if you were playing an Assassin's Creed video game where they just brandish you with Templars equals evil, in fact. And so this is just Jesuit casuistry. We've talked about this too. So the guy doesn't have that she's referencing. I won't name him. There isn't any reason to defame anybody or, verbally call them out on air or anything like that. But there's a perspective that he's missing there. And I'll continue with her question. It says, then I started looking at old videos, never looked before. Are the Templars good or not? I know it's not that simple. There's infiltration, etc. I'm not sure how to look at the Venus families either, but that's my job, I suppose. I've got to break out of the mind state of wanting to be told what I think. Okay, and so thanks for the question, HP. It's an awesome question, by the way. I'm sorry, guys. I just had to jam some lunch down, so that's why I got a little bit of acid reflux going on, I think. I'm really sorry. Had to get some sustenance in me before the presentation started. So what's happening here is she's just wanting to, for herself, to have better understanding of what's good and what's bad. And again, I'm going to read you my answer with some context here, which will make sense based on what I just said too. But I responded and again said, it's a good question. You're correct. It's not exactly that simple. Again, referencing whether or not the Templars can simply be seen for good or evil, right? I said, the way I look at it, the Templars are neutral, and the families of the Venus faction variety are seemingly seeking to restore a long-lauded balance to things. Again, think Jedi and Star Wars, also not good or evil, but calm or neutral. Okay, and this is basically going back to Star Wars, guys. This is kind of what Yoda taught, right? Like, and if you read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, this will actually be reaffirmed for you. Is that calmness is the ultimate state of expression because it takes more energy to remain calm and remain consistently calm than any other act, because the universe is constant perpetual change. That's all the universe is. That's all you can bank on here. So to remain calm amidst that chaos is the power latent within us, but it is also our challenge. It's our crucible. So this is, again, what the Templars seem to be putting in our plain sight view in order to tell us. Why they're telling us this, here's where my speculation comes in, that I haven't actually presented these hypotheses before. I'm building them into theories before I totally present them. But here's you guys are going to get my raw thinking right now in terms of where we're at with this Aryan study of the Templars, okay? So I continue and I say the Templars simply acknowledge the metaphysical reality that we live in as this materium, as a construct. So again, they simply realize that this is it's fake. It's not fake. It's just an oversimplistic way of looking at it. It's a construct. It was a decision for people to be here. It's a decision for us to cast ourselves from heaven down into the materium, right? So I continue to say it would appear that they have some sort of karma to resolve for humanity is existing in its current state to begin with, because as we've alluded to in some of these other videos lately, especially in these last two over here on the Patreon channel, the Aryan Templar Space Alien Amnesia, and of course the Serpent Roots of Humanity and the Celtic ties to the Druidic Templars. You'll learn much about how we're framing the setup of where the Aryans came from and what I'm going to be talking about here in the next parts of my answer to HP. But here, I'll continue. I said what I mean by this is, and this will make more sense if you've been tracking my latest Patreon videos on the Aryans, like I just shared, that the Templars are just reformed Martians. They're reformed Martians. Because remember, the Aryans, Ares, the planet of Ares, the planet represented by Ares is Mars. We've been tying again in Star Wars the correlation of the Mandalore War. The Mandalorians had to leave their home world because they got scorched in a war. So all of our hallmarks are here, right? With that stuff, and I'm just kind of keeping Star Wars mythology consistent with this so you guys can get it. But that's the thing. All Aryans are Martians, whether they're Templars or not, and they came here, it would seem, from the planet Mars after their cosmic war went very badly, and very badly from the effect of a planet beyond it blew up, which is now our asteroid belt. Blew away the atmosphere, came here. In my view, I think they got here on the moon. I think the moon is an ark, and I think they all hopped in it, and they escaped. So the Martians came, right? The Aryans are in a strict sense, who escaped to Earth in the aftermath of the war, which I just described, which scorched Mars. Some of their kin found ways to exploit and subjugate Earth and its original inhabitants for gain. The Templars, it would seem, also like the Jedi, found appropriate fault in the actions of them, their ancestors et al. What I simply mean by this is the Aryans that came here, they had a choice of what to do when they got here on Earth, right? Do you keep living the same way that you did on Mars? That didn't end very good for everybody, right? Or do you try and change course? This is also, by the way, everybody, knock, knock, different planet, different rules, different resonance qualities, right? These guys are people of high science, very erudite science. So you have to understand the discussions that they're having at this level, you have to presume are of an extremely complex nature with all the consequences there. And eventually things go as such in my suppositions here. Okay. So, some of them subjugate Earth and its inhabitants for gain. The Templars, it would seem, also like the Jedi, found appropriate fault in the actions of them. That's where I left, and found it best to resonate with the earthly energies, which is more becoming with the goddess, the cup and the water energy, rather than the warrior, sword, and fire energy. And these, again, are energies reflected in the tarot, right? The cups as a suit represented by the hearts in your typical playing card deck. That's your cup. Those are your cups. Again, heart, your Merkaba, your heart chakra, right? This is where all the symbolism is. So that's what Earth symbolizes. That's what Earth in the grand sense of the solar system resonates as the heart chakra in the system, right? Aries is not the heart chakra. They are the root chakra. So they have a tough time resonating with the heart chakra to begin with, but a decision has to be struck if you're going to resonate with this new planet that you're on, right? So basically, a martial art has to be taken up. You have a decision. Either you go down the same path that destroyed the planet and scorched your own and rendered it useless for however long. Maybe it's not useless now, right? That's what we're going to get into. But you're going to do it here with different rules, and so it's illogical too, at some extent, what seems to have happened here on the Earth. Okay, so half of them split. So it would seem half of the Aryans split into the people that wanted to resonate with the Earth and become more like the goddess, and the cup water energy and the warrior and the sword fire of energy of Mars went with a different faction. And this is where I say this is where you get that split of the Aryans. Some became the Druids and some became the Nazis, basically. So again, just for context of answering your question, this is oversimplification of a lot of research to do on the Aryan bloodline stuff. We're actually going to watch some Robert Sepper videos by the end that paints us that picture. But in a manner of speaking, that's where we're at, right? This is your serpent and eagle faction split. So again, the serpents are the Druids, the Dao Tia type. The eagles are the Nazis, all of the symbology on the coinage of the United States type. It's the United States of America. Or will we even have a United States after the 20th? These are the questions, right? These are the questions. So that's also, like I say, I tell her it lines up with the Enki and Enlil myths. So this is kind of where, if you look at the Babylonian epics, these are directly derived from these stories of the faction splits of the gods, which are simply Aryans. The gods were more technologically advanced people that landed here, essentially, and interfaced with the natives. So once this all occurs, all manner of political intrigue takes over the planet for ages. And I mean likely a period of time in the hundreds of thousands of years. DNA manipulation, genetical chimerical experiments, you name it. And eventually you get a genetic abomination that is modern humans. You see, just like in the Mandalorian series, which appears to be a direct allegory of our situation on Earth, the Mandalorians from Mandalore, also scorched in a war where they had to flee, just want to get back home and rebuild their homeworld. But as you see, this Baby Yoda wild strain race, which represents modern humans with latent but untapped potential, comes into the picture, and the Mandalorians, i.e. Templars, embark on a quest to shepherd Grogu/Baby Yoda back to the balanced green energy of Merkaba. So you see, I'll get some photos of Baby Yoda to bring up for you guys that of course I've got saved on the machine, but what we're getting at here is, what I'm getting at here is that just like in The Mandalorian, the responsibility to carry the child to safety is the Mandalorians to harbor because of this great war. They have this creed of foundlings and all these things. Well, the reason why they have this creed of foundlings is to take in foundlings and to shepherd them almost like a better style of orphanage is because of the wars that preceded this. So unlike the Mandalorians, here's where it goes. Here's where it gets kind of interesting with the way we look at things here on Earth is these druid types attempting to resonate with the Earth could not control the other faction, who simply became more evil and attempted to domineer and change the energy of the Earth, quite frankly, into something that it wasn't. And this is actually where the evil comes in, is the warlike energy of Aries. It was installed here. It doesn't have a home, and it tried to find it by subjugation. So this is the expression of the Aryans, right? The ones that we would know that would eventually turn into Nazis. The Druids can't control all this. All they can do is basically look at the horrors that transpire and realize that they're complicit too. Because if we're talking DNA manipulation, like the gods, fornicate with natives, do DNA manipulation with the natives, which are anatomically different from any humans that we've probably ever seen because it's so far back, but maybe representing more the Native American variety, maybe the Japanese, Polynesian, Peruvian. This is kind of my train of thought because these are the non-bearded people, and the bearded people are the ones that came from up there. So the Druids, the Templars, feel a responsibility. They feel, again, a karmic pull to get us transitioned into the next age. But no more than they could control the Aryans. They can't control us. We're beings of free will. So they have to do their best to cast steganography spells in order to leave for us to pick up the clues, like solve them. And unclog our whole system to understand what that symbolism means, most importantly. Go beyond the finding of it and solve the riddle. So this is what it would appear is kind of taking place. And here's the picture of Baby Yoda I promised. This is essentially what we are fighting as humanity. The wisdom of Yoda and the Templars fighting still against the evil of the other faction, the twisted Aryans. So this is everything the channel has been about up to this point, as people are also probably realizing. Worth showing this. The V steganography, the lambda, its conjugate. Lambda not actually at the very top, of course. It's rather in the middle of the heart chakra, but the V is the root. These are those two energies that I've just gotten done expressing as opposing. Doesn't mean they're against each other. It just means they're opposing. And they would be better to be balanced. The Templars know this. They also know that they're not going to eliminate evil. So they simply want to build up the resolve in us in what is called Christ, literally to unlock the whole center of your chakra system. It's just a label that they've ascribed as Christ, that Jesus went around and did a really good job and talked about and gave us parable to help represent. There's no religion whatsoever in what Jesus taught. There's none. Mary Magdalene and Jesus were much smarter than the average bear. So I'll continue. This is kind of where I continue the question where I just talked about, to translate for you an obligation that the Templars have, which they understand to be part of the multi-generational karma on a cosmic massive scale. And our wild, strained nature of modern humanity is a direct result of them breaking the prime directive. And see, I think this is true. I think there's, this is the story of the Watchers that we've covered in From Ashes to Angels, where the Aryans, just in general, selfishly fled the planet and just boom. Well, whether we think that it's responsible or not, we're claiming this planet. You broke the prime directive. You didn't take any responsibility for that, and that's a pretty big bunch of karma to have to take on. And I can see why we, as quite frankly, progeny of these Aryans, I mean, they are my ancestors. Whether I want them to be or not, they are my ancestors. Which side do you choose? Well, we've got free choice. Their blood is in me, but I can choose to be more like a druid, can't I? Right? That's the argument here. And so that's kind of the nature of the answer in the question too. So the breaking the prime directive and mucking around with this planet is what we still have karma to atone for, because, hey, do we really know if way, way, way back we weren't also complicit ourselves? You never know. So all because they handled affairs so poorly in their homeworld of Mars that's now in ruin. This is why it's so important to rebuild up our fellow humans now who of our ilk, and not necessarily the Templars. So again, I'm not advocating joining the ranks of the Templars. I'm sharing my thoughts with people on what the wisdom of the Templars is pointing at. Therefore, and simply look to their symbolism to solve the riddle. The quicker we solve the riddle, the faster they can reconcile their karmic debt, and then they can move home to Mars and rebuild it. Makes sense, right? The ones who have the bloodlines, who really are from Mars, they might want to go back, and that's why you see all this stuff in the news. I'm pretty convinced that's exactly what they want to do. But both factions of Aryan they're on a race to get back to Mars, to claim it for themselves, to redevelop it, to terraform it. Whatever technology they have in secret to have built it to go do that. You know, they're in a race against each other, and we're the slaves. The Templars just know that by keeping us slaves, that kicks the can down the road for the karmic cycle. They don't want any more karma. They want to go into a new transition for their whole society, right? So, the quicker we solve the riddle, the quicker they go back to Mars. The Sith/Jesuits or Nazi eagles, whatever you'd like, have similar goals to reach Mars, but they want to destroy us in the process rather than leave us as potential partners. See, that's kind of what I was saying. The Templars can use us as partners in the future, as trade partners, right? Hope this makes sense. I look and marvel at the wisdom of the Templars, and because I myself in this body am a result of the genetic experiment and fornication with the gods, and simply find my own history fascinating. I think building community here on Earth is most important, and that this matches the long-term goals of the Templars, so they can have interplanetary diplomatic relations with us in the future. So, anyway, that was a really good discussion point, HP. Thank you again for the question, and I hope that makes sense, everybody. Like, this is kind of where the whole body of research with the Irish civilizations. I've got another book I'm going through right now, which is just this is where all the stuff is clicking together. I'm reading a book called the Phoenician Origins of Civilization now, which is very much the same reaffirming stuff that we're talking about here, even in, of course, the Tao Tia book, Secrets of the Serpent Bloodline. Gosh, I don't know if we're actually going to get that one today, because what we have to get into after that, since that's cleared up, everybody is a lock into place from Ken Wheeler of what these Templars signify to our geometry lessons that we do over on the channel, but also the pentagram and the numeric associations with it, the expressions, and why it is that the V-steganography can be used. And also, I forgot to answer the second part of your question there too, HP, regarding the Venus families. I hope everybody realizes Venus is just glorified with goddess energy because of this pattern that it makes in the sky. That's it. It's as simple as that. A planet blew up in our narrative that we just read, right? The planet, the whole system was unbalanced. Therefore, you can think about this as an unstable atom. If you're thinking about chemistry class, the valence electrons are going to either try and lose charge or gain charge to reach equilibrium. Our system gained charge by bringing on a planet. It found it. It was attracted to us. Venus was. It came in, assumed orbit. Just so happens, once all the dust settled, the orbit assumed was that. Pretty friggin' cool, right? Especially for a druidic society that's like, oh my God, we actually are all about the pentagram. Holy shit. Venus is our kind of planet. Damn. That's basically what the Venus connection is. The Venus connection rebalanced our whole system. After a planet exploded, it rebalanced everything. So basically gift from God, if you think about it from that sense. And so it is glorified, and that's why the goddess symbolism is tied to it, and that's why the goddess symbolism, in a manner of speaking, is tied to what Ken Wheeler's about to teach us about. So this is something, of course, I'll just let him play his shtick here. It ties into what we're talking about. Because we got to get a little bit more serious after this, after I've more completely answered these questions about Jay Farmer says, I don't believe in reincarnation, but I think this can be an explanation. Yeah, it's true. Whether reincarnation is a thing or not, Jay Farmer, this is just a history lesson. Yeah, reincarnation needn't actually play into any argument for or against what I'm talking about here. But anyway, here's Ken Wheeler. He's gonna lock these concepts into place more with his brilliance, of course, and I'll translate. I'll see if I can, like I always do with him, break his thoughts down a little bit to make it clear for everybody. So here he's talking about people living under three different kinds of principles. and we're going to understand the substrate of the structure of Pythagoreanism for the technicality geeks out there.
This book is about one word only. It's about the word ananke. Yeah? And it's translated as necessity, but it doesn't really mean that. And in its broader context, it's kind of like how you translate the word nous. Nous, the ancient Greek word nous, is untranslatable. You can, depending on the context, it could mean the Pali, the word nous in Pali is chitta, by the way. Anytime I hear nous, I immediately ideate ancient Pali. The word chitta, or the Spiritus Sanctum, or the logos. There's another great Greek word. There's so many, and also too in Pali. There's all these words that are completely untranslatable. The most important one is the word samma, which is completely untranslatable. And I wrote a book about that. But anyway, this is all about Ananke. It's represented as a goddess. It is very, very crudely translated as necessity. And but even though this book is like 280 pages, it never actually defines Ananke, even though it has countless citations in it. And also a word in the same ilk is the word tolma. And this...
I hope everybody heard that. That's kind of important to stop real quick, interrupt him. Nous and Ananke are not translatable, at least in terms of how our feeble brains can express it via English. We've reductively talked about the nous as the chitta, and as he actually can agree, chitta and the nous are corollaries. They're synonyms, so we know that. And by extension, we've translated the nous, because it's a corollary to the chitta through the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, to mean what it does mean in that context as the mind stuff. It's a very abstract concept, but that's the best we can get at. And so the goddess itself, the nous, remember, Venus, V is the senses, the nous is the other. We lock them into place. Is to bring God into the senses, to infuse the senses, so the senses won't be fueled, or fueled rather, but fooled. If you bring in if you activate the nous along with the senses, you get Venus, and this creates a more balanced structure for a way to live a life as a person, because then you have spirituality and you have the groundedness in materialism, essentially. The V is the senses, the material. Everything we experience, the nous is the spiritual, everything beyond. Okay, so that was the reason why we really call the planet Venus the thing that it is. But there's a way deeper metaphysical meaning to the word and the expression of it than we know or typically acknowledge. And this is what the Templars use it for, and this is why the goddess matters. The goddess isn't to be taken as like, oh my God, you're not worshiping God. It has nothing to do with that. This materium, out in at least where we're existing now, has natural rules. We all agree to those, and whatever rules apply outside in the crazy chaotic hyperspace realm, maybe not even chaotic, but unknown hyperspace realm, heavenly realms. We don't have senses to interpret that stuff. So the experience that we have to decode here, for some reason, is what the Greeks hoped to get to the bottom of, and they did the best at it than anyone. But further on in the video, Ken actually gets a little bit deeper into this goddess stuff and how the Pythagoreans actually framed it for their contemporary times.
These are good for almost nothing. And this book, very well written, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of citations, 300 pages long, all about one word. This book is all about one word and defining it. Gives you all the context, all the occurrences, which is good because he already found all the occurrences in various books by various authors, but he still doesn't know what it is. Translated as necessity, sometimes represented as a goddess. What it means in true metaphysical, foundational lucidity of understanding is that it can't exist any other way. It's and necessity is kind of a crude word to refer to it, but it's in reference to the extrinsic attribute of the absolute, or the agathon, just kind of like light and illumination. This is the reason why the first two numbers of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. Let me repeat that because it's so important. First two numbers of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. It goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, so on and so forth. 1 and 1. Yeah, and by the way, the Greeks did not think of 1 as a number. They thought of 1 as a principle. But the first two digits are 1 and 1. Yeah? Principle and attribute.
Okay, so what he's saying here, everybody, principle and attribute. One thing is from where it came, like we came from God, that's where our mind exists, to interact as the nous here, and what he's translating as necessity. Necessity simply meaning, in my understanding of it, that again, you cannot alter the ultimate transformative laws of nature. You can't get around those. You can't get around the utter constant change. So the necessity piece, again, he's saying is a very crude translation, but where he gets a little bit more elaborate with it is when he's comparing the one to the one. We are just an expression of ourselves or God, whatever you want to call the connectivity of the beyond and the spiritual. It doesn't matter what you label it. We are simply the expression of that. The senses, the V, make us think that that this is everything. That there's only one, that we're not the reflection of anything, that we're not the expression of anything. That we just are. You know, this is like the atheist way of looking at things. He says in this video, and I just cracked up when I said it because I think the same thing about the atomists, the current scientific academia field, when they talk about the Big Bang Theory, and Ken says, first there was nothing, and then there was everything. You know, like that's how literally silly that whole thing is. So it goes way beyond how like a causal and effect thing, and that's why this translation of necessity is so complex. But this is the creed of the Templars, guys. This is the creed of the Pythagoreans. This is why it's important to understand what they stood for. So moving up to about 17 minutes in, he's actually talking about this geometry found in Plato, and he actually made this discovery and was the first one to translate it, and what the incommensurability of this concept meant as an expression of phi.
618. The totality of which of all these four sections is phi to the power of -3. You want to talk about Pythagorean secrets? This is the Pythagorean secret of incommensurability.
And I purposefully did not play the in-between parts because this is a pithy presentation he gave when he was drawing on the whiteboard. But it simply means that you can take any ratio and basically call it 1 and split it up into various parts. It will always spit out a constant. And this is kind of, again, where you're always going to find these mathematical expressions in universe of the Fibonacci sequence of these pentagonal shapes. The pentagon is a very natural order of the universe shape. It just so happens that Venus resonated at it and took it upon itself to orbit the Earth relative to us in that shape, which conveys meaning. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. Let me have Ken elaborate.
Phi to the power of 3, or 4.23606. But you take a single line, you divide it unevenly, then you take each one of those remaining sections and you divide it unevenly again, and you'll end up with phi, 1, 1, and 1 over phi.
And this is consistent no matter how times you perform this experiment. It will always, 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 always equal what he says it does. I mean, you cannot, it's like, you know, you think you can game the magicians sometimes when they know like the trick or the card trick better than you do. You're not going to game this. It's always going to be the case.
Which, by the way, the only geometry in the entire universe which has that incommensurable geometry, I hope I can actually draw it here free-handed pretty good, is the Pythagorean triangle, the 108, 36, 36 triangle of the Pythagoreans, which has a base of phi and two slopes of 1 over phi to the power of -3. Here we go. And if you actually take this triangle in triplicate, that is the Pythagorean pentagram. And
everybody knows the Pythagorean pentagram by now. Here it is again. Triplicate, when he's talking about laying it on top of each other 3 times, this is what you get. Here is one section. Of course, you've got the 108, 36, and 72. And oh, here we go. We've got those expressions of phi all over the entire thing. Everything that he just said rings true entirely when you take this form in triplicate. It's quite astonishing. Why does this matter even further? Well, Ken, why don't you tell us? Thanks, bud.
And you actually go from apex to base. In the incommensurable cut, we end up with a mirror image also too of phi 1 and 1 right here. And that is the incommensurable cut, where this becomes now 1 and this now becomes phi. And that's the only perfect incommensurable geometry in the entire universe. And that's the reason why this triangle in triplicate makes up the Pythagorean pentagram. It's also the exact geometry. You can see it mirrored here on my hand, the back of my hand, although it's upside down, of course. Don't like that. That's also to the geometry of water. Let me actually...
The geometry of water. The geometry of water. What is water? The water is base for all life. What, not carbon, as academia would say. Oh, they're carbon-based life forms. Carbon's not the basis of life. Water. Water. This has to do with our spirit being able to ground itself here somehow, right? What's held in a cup? Water. The Druids understand the water concept. They understand that at least here on Earth, all these things need to come into play and be balanced, and life itself really depends on it. And here's kind of the representation of what he's going to show.
Actually, erase some sections here. Right here, we don't do that. There we go. And we have over here hydrogen atom, and up here oxygen. Okay, and this is the dipole antenna of life.
There it is, the dipole antenna. Do you see? It's an antenna. It's a receiver. This is how our spirit can connect here. Why are our bodies water sacks? You know, they're 90% water is the construct of our body. So, do you see all the secrets? Do you see why if you bastardize this stuff, it doesn't work out so well for your health even? You're not as vibrant. You kind of end up looking kind of like an Emperor Palpatine type of dude. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, you can see his face well enough. I guess I could show it. There. Are you going to end up looking like one of those guys? That's why the Sith end up looking like they do. And why Yoda lived to be almost 1,000 years old. Is it? You know what I mean? So Yoda kind of represents in that story our ancient past. We've got to reconnect with it. We are a wild strain of species. We were genetically manipulated here, and whatever you think about gender politics, race politics, we're all kind of thrown into this soup together, and there's common fuckery. So this is why it's important for us to be a little bit grounded as a community in these times. But that's kind of what I'm talking about with the advocacy of the Templars. Not that we follow them, simply that we decode their riddles so we ourselves can make a better future based on the sins of their past. Anyway, moving on. That was kind of the opening that I had. I wanted to make a brief announcement to folks that are Cliff High fans. He's back. He's blogging. So if you go to halfpasthuman.com, Cliff High no longer has the Alta reports even up there. He took everything down. He took all of his videos down off YouTube. He was, but he is blogging. And thank God for that. His blog is what got me to do this next section, to affirm the next section I'm just about to go over with you guys with a little bit of more of a closer eye, and to have some validation for my thinking. Because I don't even know as much as he does about virology, vaccines, genetics. He just wrote in one of his blogs, in fact, on here, that he had taken some Cambridge courses, Oxford courses on virology, or Columbia University. That's what it was. Columbia University courses. Special, and ramped him up, got him done when he saw the COVID-19 situation spinning up. So he's more of an expert on this stuff than even most doctors are, because his mind is solution oriented in relation to things. But quite frankly, there are a couple things before we get into him and why he only acted as a validation of things. Follow his blog, by the way. He's blogging on almost a daily basis. I'll go over the affirmation component of him after we kind of go into the topic at hand. You guys all see it. mRNA vaccines. So this is a white paper that actually goes back to 2017, and it's a Moderna white paper. Not very long, but I was starting to get a calling to look into this stuff, because if a lot of you were following me last year, I released this thing with Allison. We did this Kiyotsugi for her, her organization, coronavirus parental guide for what's going on with COVID-19. This document still withstands the test of time, but we went all this time and amassed all this evidence, made it palatable for parents, really, because it's Allison's words, not my harsh, sharp ones, to enlighten them to the bioweapon. This is a flipping bioweapon, man. And here's what you do about it. And so I haven't talked much about the implements or the injections much at all, really, because this thing wasn't very well received in the community that I broadcast it to in my own like personal community. Hardly anybody read it, and so I felt, do I want to go and put in all the effort this time around? My heart was called to at least present it here to you guys, and I guess time will tell how serious things get as to what action ends up getting taken from there. But there are major concerns that I have beyond just the typical Bill Gates conspiracy stuff where people don't want to get vaccines because it's going to be a software update and you don't really know what's in them. I wanted to dive in because there are a couple of different types of vaccines. One of them is the mRNA, and then there are particulate ones like the AstraZeneca one, which is more of a blanket spectrum thing that we can go over to at the end of this component of the presentation. But we have a couple of different things that we have to consider, and the mRNA injection looks to be the most disruptive to the system. It's funny that says disruptive innovation and vaccination. So they start this whole thing, of course, with, immunization's been part of our establishment for years. Nucleic acid vaccines, DNA and messenger RNA deliver the nucleotide sequence that codes for the proteins and the pathogens used to cause the disease. The idea is that those proteins will act as antigens that the immune system will recognize. In other words, these vaccines enable the body to innately mimic a native infection to elicit an immune response, but without the ability to cause disease or spread. And it's this statement that I wanted to examine for this whole delivery of in this 10-page white paper, right? And so what you end up signing is the mRNA vaccines. They give you some other back history of how DNA really works. But remember, we actually have, before we get into this, a better explanation in this book of the mRNA. Let me go back through this and tell you guys from the bioelectric field level, right? So we're going to be talking about the metaphysical person, the chakra system, the entire metaphysical person. We got the cups over here, the swords over here. all these symbols match up, of course, with all the Templars. Let me reread this from last time, because I spoke to this last time, that that the DNA transmission in a normal mRNA split in the body, how it's supposed to work is the DNA is going to replicate into a new cell. It's going to have itself, and half of it is going to get split off and code for the messenger RNA, which tells all of the other cells around it what it's doing, and also to design a template for them to work quicker with the same message, right? There's a timing mechanism to this. It doesn't happen all at once. That's what's key when you read about, this is what we read last time in the vagus nerve and the alta major chakra axis. There's actually a bioelectric component to this that is informed by spirit to the timing of this stuff. And the mRNA requires that timing to be precise. If you think about an engine and you think about the pistons in an engine, you think about a camshaft, and a camshaft is the thing in the engine, basically, if you're unfamiliar, that has little teeth on it, that as it rotates, those teeth will lift those pistons in a synchronous order, but to where no two pistons are ever exploding in the chamber at any given time. It happens almost rapidly, but the explosions are timed. It's a very precise timing that the engine needs to maintain in order to keep the car moving in perpetual motion. And that's key for the engine not to render a catastrophic failure, is that timing. You have timing belts in your car. You have the camshaft. You have all these things that interoperate the timing mechanisms to where your car doesn't break, just spontaneously, blow up, basically, when you're driving. It's all based on timing. And that's what the spiritual component of the chakra system, essentially, to put it mildly, so we don't get into the weeds of the fascial tissue and all this stuff, which broadcasts out other signals, and your DNA connects with that spiritual signal, and it connects with that timing, okay? And so mRNA does this, and this is why it takes a while for you to heal your wounds. You can't just, like Wolverine or somebody, just heal your wounds immediately when you, even with him, if there's a timing component, they're just they just have more horsepower, and you're thinking about it from the engine perspective. If you think about like a comic book character like Wolverine, who has massive regenerative capabilities, wouldn't happen unless his mRNA had that timing component intact from spirit. Okay? So, why is the mRNA dangerous, Ben? It's just what the hell, right? What are you getting at? Well, I'm giving you that preamble because I'm telling you how mRNA is supposed to work. The timing is everything, and this is where the concerns start to set in. So, page 3 says there are now 6 prophylactic mRNA vaccines in clinical trials as of 2017, of course. 4 of which are being conducted by Moderna Therapeutics. Moderna is the one, of course, along with Pfizer, that have launched the mRNA vaccines, and they're the first ones to the field. These are the ones people are getting right now, and this is why this sucks so bad. These vaccines combine the advantages of DNA vaccines, which have that natural antigen expression, which we talked about, while addressing many of the disadvantages. Unlike, let me zoom in on this so you guys can see better. I can't even see as well. Unlike DNA vaccines, mRNA vaccines do not need to enter the nucleus, nor do they risk being integrated into our DNA, and they are directly translated into proteins, antigens. As a result, mRNA vaccines require only 1/1000th of the dose of DNA vaccines and do not need special delivery devices. Okay, so all this is true, but here's a part of suspicion that you want to wonder about. Okay, so it doesn't attach to the cell or the DNA. What does it do? So you've got this foreign thing in there that doesn't really activate until a trigger hits, right? Think depth charges in World War II, right? Or those depth mines that were tied to chains to try and circumvent subs from going in. If you got into proximity of those, boom, it would go off. It would go off, and it would blow up the sub. But the military didn't necessarily think of the ramifications of what if they didn't blow up? They'd just be sitting there. So here's another piece of our story. So they're saying basically that we can just blanket the body with these things. No problem. They won't even interact with anything if nothing comes close. That's essentially what they're saying here. It's the same deployment mechanism as the Army or the Navy, probably rather, deploying these depth charge systems during World War II. They're still there, unexploded in many cases to this day. Landmines are unexploded all over the world too. It's kind of the same type of corollary here, right? So when you go down here, here's your traditional structure. So the traditional vaccine goes in. It takes a bespoke pattern, which means it's specialized. It specializes the response to every single pathogen. This is what your body wants. This is what your immune system is designed to do, is have a different response to every encounter, okay? You don't want mines in your body for what we're going to go into in a second here, because you want that differentiated response. Timing has to be different for one, but the response has to be different based on the virus too. So your body has to, in your cell structures, have to correctly identify what it is, the action that it needs to take, and how it needs to appropriate that. And a typical vaccine, the ones that actually vaccines have worked in the past, and this is the technology that you use. This is why I say I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm anti whatever the heck they're doing now. Okay, now you've got the mRNA vaccine, and it doesn't have this bespoke. It doesn't have this bespoke identification and deployment of action process that a typical vaccine calls a cell to have to treat every situation differently. This is what your immune system needs. The mRNA vaccine just goes in there and one size fits all answer. Just a straight path through. Look at even their chart. They're not even hiding the fact that it's just like, one size fits all approach. They visualized it for us here in the way that the path of the vaccine works. Let me read you those steps, right? Identify antigen, standardize the plasmid mRNA, standardized scale, standardized multi-product facility, standardized needle and syringe. Everything is the same. Everything is the same. So here they go into like business case scenarios. We needn't talk about that business case. What's more profitable for somebody, because they love to talk about that. But they go into the Wall Street Journal article where they're talking about here too. DNA vaccines are too slow. That we can't deploy them quick enough. We can't read responses quick enough. We would have been able to respond better in AIDS. So they're telling you a bunch of propaganda here, even just there in the white paper. Not much of a white paper, honestly. It doesn't tell you much other than a confirmation, again, of what the standardization process is, and that they didn't take any timing consideration into this for the vaccine activation, okay? So there's your white paper. That was 2017. Now we've got some stuff starting to happen this year. This was November of last year. Science.com or science.org, sciencemag.org. Huge publication. I'm focusing on very large publications for this presentation because it's actually important to use the stuff that's academically approved and still be able to prove our point, actually, than to talk about a bunch of crazy stuff that people aren't going to attach to. But people at Science Magazine are talking already about people needing to prep for vaccine side effects as a manner of partial propaganda, I think, just to try and soften the blow to people. So when early on things may go wrong, you get, is my stream, anyone have the stream stopping and starting? I am. Yeah, I am. I'm getting stream drops, guys. Let me Let me see if I can fix this real quick. I've got one thing I'm going to try here. So we're talking about vaccines. I'm certainly not going to let this deter me from the rest of the presentation. I can't take takes here to edit the video, but what I did do was I just shut off a couple of processes on my computer to see if that would affect the stream quality. But I do acknowledge it's dropping in and out on Theta slightly. So hopefully that fixes it. But back to the article, so we don't lose too much. So we don't lose too much momentum. If the stream does hitch, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just gonna have to blast through this. I'll post it later. So hang with me until things get better. Public needs to prep for vaccine side effects. This article basically goes into an emphasis. I'll post this so people can read through it. An emphasis on basically what's happening, and also to show them how the mRNA vaccine works. So here is a representation of, or a visual of, what we were just talking about, where the mRNA vaccine is not part of becoming integrated rather with the DNA structure. It's a different particle with a different strand inside of it. And what happens when it comes up to the empty mRNA messenger in an existing cell, when it's in contact with the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, this basically unleashes like a bomb, like a depth charge. So this article furthers our mechanical understanding, actually, of the mRNA vaccine to suggest, of course, this is going to cause that explosion. Here's the problem because of the timing. They make no mention in the article or anywhere else that I can find that the messenger RNA that explodes is not in danger of causing a chain reaction explosion to the other ones that are in the body, because that's what mRNA does. It's basically, you can think of it like tuned in to the same radio frequency to transmit that message. If something happens and the timing component is not considered from Spirit, like the if this then that scenario for a software programmer, basically, right? If that's not coded for in the timing component of the virus, which it does not look like it is, what's going to happen, right? That's the question that I aimed to solve, and I found my answer in the Nature Reviews article, okay? So nature.com is another academia certified publication where I will reference these articles so you guys can find them. So I don't bore you with the details on this. The only thing that matters is everything related to cytokines, okay? So this article goes into all sorts of different other visualizations of it. This is probably the most elaborate article I've even found on the mRNA technology and the vaccines, because this actually shows the consequences of what we're talking about if these timing components will react the same way that I expect that they do. I will just go to the first instance of it, okay? The mRNA technology, right? They're starting off, we have a similar understanding basically to what I've just talked about. In essence, I mean, I'm being very shorthanded about the way I'm explaining this to you guys to not get into the weeds of over technical crap. But this is important. We have a similar understanding, by the way, at this point in the article. It's about, a third of the way down of mRNA technology in general. And it says, the immunostimulatory properties of mRNA can conversely be increased by the inclusion in an adjuvant. An adjuvant just is an additive, basically, to increase the potency of some mRNA vaccine formats. These include traditional adjuvants, so traditional additives, as well as novel approaches that take advantage of the intrinsic immunogenicity of mRNA or its ability to encode immune modulatory proteins. Self-replicating RNA vaccines have displaced increased immunogenicity and effectiveness after formulating the RNA in a catatonic nanoemulsion based on the license. So nanoemulsion is just, it's a solution. Okay, these scientists really like to use their big words. Cationic nanoemulsion. It speaks to the charge and the particulate size of the emulsion of the solution, right? And what they're saying here is they're comparing the old way in which RNA vaccine technology works with some of these new methods. So in trialing all this out using this admixture, essentially trimix, this copyrighted admixture, trimix had good results, and so they used it in mRNA augmented immunogenicity of naked, unmodified, unpurified mRNA in multiple cancer vaccine studies, which were particularly associated with increased DC maturation and cytotoxic lymphocyte responses. Okay? So they've trialed the mRNA vaccine in this type of emulsion solution that they're going to deliver it to the people with in cancer studies, okay? Specifically tuned to go after the cancer. And they were able to control the cytotoxic response. So the cytokines. The cytokines, remember, back to when the novel coronavirus first hit the scenes, the risk of death was not from the virus itself. It was because it was causing cytokine storms. It was causing the immune system to elicit a response that was exaggerated over the top of what it was used to. And this is why so many people died in China and Iran, because MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, and SARS, South Asian Respiratory Syndrome, both pieces of the bioweapon, right? So when these things get red, dead. Didn't happen in the white population. Why? Because we're not phenotypically similar enough to where those activated responses kicked off. But sure as shit, that looks like they're going to fix that with this next step, right? So here's where we start getting into here's where we start drawing our conclusions, everyone. The type of mRNA carrier and the size of the mRNA carrier complex have also been shown to modulate the cytokine profile induced by mRNA delivery. For example, the mRNA active vaccine platform depends on its carrier to provide the adjuvant activity. Okay? So that's to say that the implement being injected, it's required for it to intervene. It's not going to teach the body anything. That's what that just said. It's not going, this vaccine, like a regular bespoke vaccine system, doesn't teach the body any new tricks. It simply gives the body this tool, like a bomb in the middle of the ocean. The current of the ocean didn't change. The charge of the ocean didn't change. You just slapped a bomb in the middle of it. That's what this vaccine is. Specifically filled with cytokines. We now know what type of bomb it is because of this piece. It's a bomb that's filled with cytokines. It's pre-packed with cytokines, everybody. That's very bad. Why? Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. For example, the mRNA so we already went into that. This vaccine format has elicited favorable immune responses in multiple preclinical animal studies for vaccination against cancer and infectious diseases. Okay. Why do I suspect it may be favorable for cancer even? Well, versus what we're talking about, cancer spreads geometrically, everybody. So you have to understand the cellular division process of cancer. Cancer spreads geometrically. It's a geometric calculation and expression. Where normal cells grow by spreading by division. So you've seen a cell split, and then two more cells, and they split, and they grow by division. It's a much slower process, but it still requires the timing component, different entirely than a geometric process that just needs to be encapsulated. So they are comparing apples to oranges, essentially, which is a problem too. But they go on to say that the pro-inflammatory cytokines and chemokines after intrametal immunization was shown. A similar adjuvant activity was also demonstrated in the context of the mRNA-based vaccines using the adjuvant and unmodified single-strand DNA. So it goes on to talk about how these engineered cytokines, essentially, to cut straight to the chase, when they come in contact and are triggered by a SARS-CoV-2 or SARS at all, it sounds like, if this depth charge cytokine bomb even comes in proximity to a regular SARS virus, it explodes. The problem is, because lack of timing component, if one bomb goes off, all bombs go off because of the mRNA being connected at that messaging level, wherever it's at in the body. So you can think about all these depth charges being strung out like on a like controlled demolition. So in essence, if somebody were to be injected with this mRNA vaccine, not knowing this, they run a high risk of next time they come in contact with one single viri of COVID or SARS or whatever, or MERS, cytokine storm. These bombs are pre-packed with cytokines. The person will die in 45 seconds. They won't know what hit them if that's the case. This is my conclusion to what I'm reading here, guys. It's right there in the journals. They're telling you what the technology is, not factoring in for the bioelectric body and how the timing mechanism works for reproduction of cells. It's ridiculous. So what are the... This is where it just gets sad to me, guys, because this is where I started to think like, okay, well, I must be interpreting this wrong, right? I'm not smart enough. It goes through my head like a week ago, over the last week, is I'm not smart enough to declare this and I just doubted my conclusions, because I just don't want to believe them. I don't want to believe that it can be that bad. I don't want to believe that, because I already have loved ones that have gotten it. I'll just out and say it. I'm committing kind of like my own logical fallacies and denying what I know is likely to be the case with this thing, because I already have seen so many of my loved ones get this thing. And what I fear is that they have injected a ticking time bomb into themselves, right? And it's actually, guys, it's by Cliff High's blog that I mentioned already that I decided to share this today, because in one of his blogs from the 8th, so from a few days ago, he posted something very along the similar lines of this. And again, I want you guys to go to his blog and start reading this stuff. He's going to give some great perspective as we go into year one and the reset scenario. But he starts off this one, not a hippopotamus. And he quite frankly says the mRNA product is not a vaccine. It does not stop either getting the virus, nor does it stop the spread. Vaccine, by definition, provides the body with antibodies against the virus by leaving them antigens, blah, blah, blah. We talked about that by showing the two... We talked about when we were in the mRNA vaccine white paper, remember, when we were showing this. This is essentially what Cliff High's saying. This is a typical vaccine structure. This is not. See, it's just the design of it is totally faulty, okay? So what he's saying here as he's continuing is, I was like, wow, that's right on line with what I thought. So mRNA technology does not do that. It works by altering a key component of your cell's reproductive mechanism, the mRNA, the messenger RNA transport system. The mRNA system, the messenger aspect of its work, involves your DNA and its reproduction within each cell in your body. The mRNA process is also a primary key to your body's ability to reproduce not only its cells, but to participate in producing a new human. Okay? And of course, we explained why that was, the connection with the bioelectric field. And again, this is a text that's in the Evernote server for the $15 level patrons. You can go look that up, vagus nerve and the altomajor chakra axis. But we went deep into that book in the last stream, so I'm just referencing it here. But that is how the new human is produced, through the spirit. Hi, by the way, Jay Ben. I forgot to say hi to you. I saw you come in there, and I was in the middle of a rant, and not a rant so much, but of explaining something. Welcome to the stream. Says, yes, the mRNA product is directly tampering with your body's DNA, but no, it will not turn you into a hippopotamus. So that's why he titled this thing hippopotamus, of course. mRNA technology is not a vaccine by technical definition, but more importantly by function. It is a totally new form of genetic engineering. The mRNA technology is untested. Well, rather, you are the test. If you take the shot, you will be participating in one of the largest secret medical experiments ever performed on humanity. This is, in my view, is in Cliff's view, of course, is the ultimate escalation of the pursuits of the Nazi doctors who were active in the death camps. Faction wars, right? He's talking about the Nazis. Eagle faction. Our evil Aryan brothers, basically, right? The Sith Jesuits. I'll continue. Universe loves surprises, he says. The mRNA vaccine experiment is filled with irony from Universe. Where to begin? Well, there is that it was politicized before it even started. It was part of the CCP planning back when they released the virus, the Chinese Communist Party. More on that in another essay. He actually wrote about this today. His essay today brought me to tears, guys. I cannot read his blog from today. Oh my God, it made me cry. Oh, just thinking about it. Read his blog from today. It speaks to the Holocaust that's happening in China right now, and it's really, really sad. It will make you. It's putting tears in my eyes just mentioning it. So he did write about that today. So was instantly improperly labeled as a vaccine, has the big pharma being indemnified by government for money, has many, many technical points of irony, culminating in the ultimate irony is that the mRNA technology, by design, preloads the body against exposure to the virus. Bang. There it is. His conclusion is the same as mine. And the reason why I mention this again is because he's an expert in virology. I am not. This is why I'll admit to you, I didn't want to believe my own conclusions. But here it was, plain as day. He's looking at it the same way. Preloads the body to those cytokines. The mRNA technology alters your body's immune response. Usually, as you encounter the virus must penetrate receptive cells, then hijack permissive cells, reproductive system to make the new parts of the new virus. We just explained all that stuff. It uses your cell's mRNA in the process. Humans discovered this mRNA hijack method, and the virologists and Big Pharma are telling us now that the idea is to interrupt this hijack by providing smarter mRNA that already knows how to recognize the virus by its unique shell, which is just a blanket coverage beacon. Basically, it's just like, oh yeah, looks like a duck, smells like a duck, must be a duck. What if it's a goose? Well, that is where they fucked up, he says. Universe put in a big load of irony. Turns out that time and maturation process are key to this. Remember how I was explaining the timing belt, guys? Like this book, this text on how the vagus nerve and chakra system operates relative to the mRNA structure defines this. It's so clear. There's this timing component that Cliff High is talking about too. And here it goes. And this is key. What is necessary for your body's immune response is time. Time for it to locate the invader, time for it to alert resources, time for the resources to identify and pattern the invader, time for the response to replicate. This last is the most important aspect of the entire process. The time to eradicate it. You can't just blanket coverage it with cytokines. You'll get the cytokine storm. It will overwhelm everything. It's like taking all of your kamikaze fighters, but exploding your bombs inside your own castle walls type stuff. Like, why would you do that? It's a bad strategy. But here we are as people, we're doing that. We're just like permissively taking in these Trojan horses that have this potential, right? So the mRNA product, not a vaccine, loads your body with mRNA, already knows what the virus is and how to respond to it. That's the problem. Again, it doesn't take any time to consider it or assay it or take a unique response. The irony is that mRNA has a communication method across just the mRNA layer in the body that is totally ignored, if not unknown to the virologist in Big Pharma. This is what we talked about, how it connects to all the other mRNA signalers in the body through the fascial tissue. Okay, the fascial tissue is its delivery superhighway. So in the natural course of virus contact, one mRNA in one cell of your body alerts all other cells via the mRNA channel. So there it is. There it is too. Describing that if it happens once, it's going to happen everywhere. If one detonation happens, that message is sent everywhere. Even as the first cell is dying from the lysing and splitting open the virus, its mRNA is signaling instructions on how to fight the invader to all other cells in the area, which in turn are relaying it to the other cells further out. There is time involved in this, and its process is how the body remains in sync, just like the timing belts and the camshaft in your engine. If everything goes off all at once, your engine explodes and your car ceases to exist, or it stops driving, it dies. Your engine is no longer, just like your heart is no longer. It's a very good corollary to keep in mind. The camshaft not existing at all, pistons exploding all at once. Okay, now contrast this with the mRNA product from Big Pharma, which pre-patterns the mRNA throughout your whole body. First, we note mRNA product does not make any cells less receptive nor more permissive in the virologist meaning of these words. It happens then as your first cells encounter the virus that they perform as expected. Their mRNA signals to the other nearby cells. Only now, in this instance of preloaded mRNA, the signaling does not result in carefully controlled defense of your body. Instead, all the cells, as their each signal in turn, go into attack mode, as they are already patterned. They already know the shell of the virus. As soon as each cell is signaled because of the presence of the mRNA, each cell in your body thinks that it specifically is under attack. Even though erroneously, of course, they are not under attack, they will signal the trigger as if they are under attack. The result is that the very cell instantly responds, even though those cells are not under invasion and perhaps only a single cell has come into contact with the virus. Thus, the whole body, within only a few minutes, goes into what is called a cytokine storm, and you die. Yet the more universal irony is the mRNA product touted as a vaccine actually makes a human more likely to die with a far less virus exposure. And that's the point. If this is the conclusion, guys, the people that have already gotten this thing have already gotten a time bomb inside of them. And so all it would take for this to play out is to start seeing people get exposed just by one single viri, and boom goes the dynamite. And I can't comprehend the possible loss. It does mean, as Cliff High goes on to state here, read the rest of the blog. I'm not going to read all of it. I only read about half of it, in fact, because he's stating about where society goes. This is why in his predictive WebBot data, he actually saw wave 2 being worse, he suspects. That wave 1 was not going to be bad. Wave 2 was going to be the catastrophic one. Kids were going to be in there. Because think about it. I mean, kids aren't susceptible to it now. But kids are also, especially the ones in school, they're going to be going around being required to get vaccinated to go back to school in a lot of instances. A lot of parents need this to happen because they have to get back to work. They can't babysit them. They can't teach them. Homeschooling is too much of a chore. I'm in the middle of that world. I know the drivers that the parents feel, and they blindly are doing this just because it will get them back to normal. And they're not considering the health of their own kids. So it's sad. In advance, I'm mourning for the next few months, probably. The economic reset's happening, but so much uncertainty with this health stuff, guys. So freaking much. So what I am even thinking about doing, because this mRNA thing is so bad, and you guys do what you want to do, right? But I have, like I said, I already have people who have taken this thing. It's in my life, and I love them, and man, it's just going to be so sad. And so at least for me and mine, I'm starting to have this conversation, the path of lesser evil. The AstraZeneca vaccine isn't out yet. It's not approved in the United States. It's only approved in the UK. It also doesn't look to be potentially as dangerous as the mRNA vaccine. It does blanket the body with a bunch of particulates. If you read through this, you can basically read how that all works, and especially if you are interested in Catherine Austin Fitz's research, her latest Solari report that just came out this last month details, and I can't go into this here, this is behind a paywall for her. She has a subscription you can go get this material for. I have this on my Evernote server to read through, but in this, she more goes into the traditional kind of conspiracy theories about what she thinks the particulate situation truly is about. And I have a tendency to agree with her. What it looks like is it makes the person a better antenna so they can receive wireless signals better. But honestly, I don't think that's anything that if somebody were to get the AstraZeneca vaccine, like instead of the Moderna vaccine or the Pfizer vaccine, it's not something they wouldn't be able to correct the mistake of later with enough C60. You see what I mean? So it's like, okay, do you have enough time to educate everybody in your life about the potential dangers of this? Or do you say, appeal to them, meet them halfway and say, hey, this AstraZeneca one's coming out too. Maybe that one's less risky. Maybe wait, because I don't like what I'm seeing about the potential consequences for an untested technology, because here's what it looks like. Not to be an advocate in any way of this injection fraud, as Catherine Austin Fitz puts it. I think her terminology for this in her latest report is just brilliant. The injection fraud. But it does at least maybe buy you some time. I don't know, with waiting for all of this to play out, because if you can get people on that train of thought, okay, I see what you're saying. Maybe they say they reason with you, and then in the time it takes to even get approved, we might see what we're expecting. We might see deaths happening on a massive, unknown cause basis. And in that period of time, maybe they educate themselves more and more and more and more, one would hope. I'm starting to see that this is potentially the path that I'm going to take in terms of expressing my thoughts to the people in my actual, physical life. I know I mentioned to all you guys at the beginning, like I did that coronavirus presentation for the parents that I work with, and it just wasn't received very well. This is probably where how I'm going to attempt to appeal a little bit more. You figure out what's on your mind for doing it best. Okay. But those are my 2 cents. This is my analysis, everybody. I am not a medical expert in any fashion. I am an expert on parsimony, Occam's razor, and figuring things out with logic and wisdom. Parsimony. That's what critical thinking leads us to. So here's a clip I will play, an inglorious type of a clip as a visualization from the movie Password Swordfish from 2001, which visualizes to me kind of what a single cytokine bomb explosion might look like inside your body, were it to trigger, and this maybe to cause a chain reaction. So we'll just let this clip play.
Rescue team, let's go. Who's on the roof?
All shooters, you are holding for command. There. Hold for command.
Joy, what are you doing? Handling this.
Look, don't fuck with this guy, man. You're gonna get these people killed.
We've got 2 teams on the roof above us. We've got a team over there. We've got a team on that.
Double this team up, that's the best thing. Get a guy to
Roberts.
grab the girl.
Don't talk, just listen. Each of the 22 hostages has been wrapped with 20 pounds of C4 explosives. They've also been taped with 15 pounds of stainless steel ball bearings, which makes them the world's largest walking Claymore mines.
They got the green light.
Hey, look, I got this guy on the phone over here, Joy.
Get the hell off the phone. I'm done playing with this asshole. Go on.
Around their necks are radio frequency electronic dog collars. Dog walks out of the yard, gets their shit shocked down. Same thing here. This bank is their yard. So don't fuck with me.
Johnson, you and your partner, move up between those vehicles.
Stand down! Get back! Stand down! Get back! Officer, stand down right now! He's gonna shoot! He's gonna shoot! Get her! No! Release the hostage! No! Release the hostage! Gun! Take cover! No! Let it go! Let it go! Release the hostage! Let it go! Let it go! Let it go!
Pretty brutal. Don't strap a ticking time bomb into your body with a bunch of cytokine ball bearings strapped to it. It'll signal it to all the other, like not exactly like John Travolta was saying, but again, all of them were matched together with radio frequency, right? It's the closest corollary I could find in popular media to show you guys to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. So I hope this resonates. It certainly doesn't bode well for our 2021 year if this plays out. I mean, this basically dooms 2021 to be worse than 2020, as if anybody thought it was going to be better. But let's start loving each other even more right now, guys. We're going to need it. Everybody's going to need it. So I'm going to close out with some actual archaeology to show a little bit more of the Aryan ancestry work that I've been doing. Robert Sepper's been sharing a lot of his stuff lately, and again, it's funny to see how many people out there are on the same threads. I'm on the same thread as Cliff High. I'm on the same thread as Robert Sepper with some of this stuff. So let's piece all these disparate puzzle pieces together, figure out the Templar puzzle, as it were, right? And of course, in classical Templar fashion, we've got the Super Bowl coming up on the 10th next month. Of course, it's being played in Tampa Bay. Super Bowl 55 VV. Of course, it's LV as they're putting in the Roman numerology. But here, I'll actually bring it up. I forgot to bring up Super Bowl 55 wiki for reference for this stream here. Oh, it's the 7th. Yeah, it's a good thing I did bring it up. Oh, interesting. I'm really glad that I brought this up. Check this out, guys. I haven't been to their actual site yet, but they have this weird wood resin kind of thing, almost like the case for my cell phone I've got from Carved. Super Bowl ticket packages. The Super Bowl is being played in where's the Wikipedia page? My God. I guess I have nobody but myself to blame. My search term was pretty horrendous. What do I expect? But here it is, Super Bowl 55, of course, real significant number of the V steganography, and it's also the home stadium of our Templar friends, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, in a manner of speaking, I think we can all cheer on the Buccaneers this year to see if they win in their own home turf, because it will be validating for the research itself that the shepherding process, at least to show us the way through these symbols, is working. And that will be very encouraging. So I actually, for the first time in a really long time, I'm cheering on a football team for a very specific result. Because it's simply a ritual. And if this result plays out like it may, that they win in their home turf, then and who would it be against is kind of where I'm getting at here. In the last couple of weeks of the season, we ended up with the Seahawks playing the Rams, the Bills playing the Colts, Washington playing the Buccaneers, and Titans playing the Ravens, Saints playing the Bears, Steelers playing the Browns last night. So things are starting nicely for this decode of symbolism. And so it would assume, we also may assume, that we're picking up the Templars' riddles to somewhat of a correct degree based on what we've already presumed about these things. We've been presuming all year that if the Bills do well, then that means that we can anticipate Nikola Tesla's paradigm coming to the fore, because Nikola Tesla, of course, his first invention was the hydroelectric dam there at Niagara Falls. The Bills also represent some other things relative to the native past. But if they do well, we can anticipate some things happening here. We were also anticipating, actually, the same type of deal with the Seahawks. Seahawks represent similar things from the context of the secret space program, rather, and also things about the native past. They didn't do so well yesterday, but they played the Rams. The Rams are, remember, Aries is the symbol of the ram, the Aryans, right? The Aryans. So basically the Aryans beat the Seahawks yesterday, which means that the Aryans aren't done yet. This actually kind of makes sense. The Aryans right now are resisting the technology reveal from the other faction, from the Templar faction. And so they were defeated, and the Rams persist. But of course, really good omen, the Buccaneers beat Washington, the Washington football team. They're in D.C. What does that say for our ritual? Our 75th year reset Jubilee ritual. If you're wondering, again, what the heck I'm talking about, go watch this video on my Theta channel. Watch the interview I did with Corey on the Phoenix Enigma, too. It's a 4-hour-long contextual discussion about the same. And it'll give you some more insight, but continue along with the free Patreon video I also posted here, furthering the serpent goddess riddles. It'll give you a couple of those pieces outside of needing to find it out with the Patreon, of course. But this is what we've been talking about. So Buccaneers beating the Washington faction in the swamp was a good omen. The Ravens and the Titans, the Ravens are magic. The Ravens represent magic, of course. So magic is in play. The Tesla flaming faction, I think, is what I've represented the Titans to be in the past. But the Titans also have these Greek mythology representations. And this may factor into the automaton presentation I do next time. But then we also had the Saints beating the Bears and the Browns beating the Steelers. This is also why... here's why also we can look to these markers as positive for our suppositional. I think we may be able to just say that we did solve the riddle. Maybe after June, at least. I know that we did, but I'm waiting from, like any scientist. A scientist wants more reference points before they can validate everything about their experiment. This isn't an experiment to me, but something much more important. But we can see now. The Saints being those ancient Iranian, Italian factions that intercepted and moved in to the Basques region in France and basically hijacked all that, the fleur-de-lis symbolism, essentially, right? And they took over for the divinity of the land. So the Saints are not so saintly, of course. They're more of the ancient Babylonian faction that's in with the Vatican. They won. So we know that they're still in play. But something very interesting happened. Remember the whole thing about the Pittsburgh election Steelers, guys? I decoded that too in the last video, in a few videos back, where the diamond of Washington, D.C. to fall, to bring about the gold diamond, the gold standard. The red and the blue diamonds, which are the current factions, would also have to fall to bring about the new money standard. It was also in alignment with all the things at the time of the election, and they were the best team in the NFL. They quickly lost to the traditional worst team in the NFL, the Browns, the butt-end joke of the NFL. What does that tell you about the whole nonsense of the election steal? Well, looks like it's bullshit. Looks like it's confirmed to be bullshit via the occult magical ritual that's performed in front of us, right? So these are all the things that happened yesterday in the NFL playoffs. I didn't watch any of these games. I won't watch any of them until the Super Bowl. I just don't choose to I got so much else to do. Haven't watched football for I think this is the fourth now season that I have not watched or paid attention to, and my life is so much better off without it. But I do want to see our Templar compatriots pull off the ritual to win Super Bowl 55 in their home turf because of all the other steganography attached to it as well, which we've already gone through. So there's your update on the playoffs. Here's something interesting. When you go to the playoff page on ESPN, when you hit the NFL playoff icon up here, or the navigation item, you get this video. This is what they do so often. 2 minutes and 16 seconds long. Why is that significant? Why? Well, it's the triangular number of 666. 6 times 6 times 6 equals 216. So it's your 666. There it is. And it's right in the, they put it right here in these video time captures all the time, of course. But here are your scenarios. And this is why it looks so cool for us, is these are the teams we've got remaining. So like last year, we actually have the Chiefs are like the commander-in-chiefs. So these guys are playing the Browns next week. Big game. If the Browns beat the Chiefs, we know something's up with the commander-in-chief faction behind Trump. We know something huge is up with what the representation of the ritual would be, at least, right? Because again, the Browns just keep pounding through, if that were the case. We've got the Bills and the Ravens. Are we going to get Nikola Tesla's paradigm, or are we going to still have this magic occult overlay on top of us? Right? So I'm pulling for in next week's games in order for the path of our Baby Yoda existence off into the future, for it to look the best, the results would reflect that in the playoff games. And that would mean the Bills beating the Ravens and the Chiefs beating the Browns. Would also look best for the G-men, the Freemasons, right? Represented by the G on the compass and all this. That's what the Packers are. They're like, everything Freemasonry, especially they're just like Seattle. They're on the 47th parallel, 47 degrees north, which is degrees of the compass. They put those cities right there at the top. So hopefully they beat the Rams. And of course our essentially our Templar buddies beat out one of the factions of the Jesuits that are in with the banker controlled factions of old, right? If you're looking at that, the Italian Babylonians. So hopefully Templars beat Italian Babylonians, Freemasons beat the Aryans. The NFC. Wow, the NFC is really where the Aryan faction war representations beefing up with the symbolism. And our paradigm shift into the next age is what it would appear the AFC would be. So from there, I don't know. I think I want to see the result that I would like to see in the Super Bowl for our Aryan war ritual to have the best result, and that would indicate to us that the best result is in play at that point, because the results of these football rituals reflective of the deeper meanings and rituals in society at large. We would have, I would like to see the Templars playing the Bills. That would mean the best result for us, I think, because I can't really actually, if that happens, I don't really care who wins the Super Bowl, because the interpretation of the ritual at that level, if either of those two teams wins, is a pretty good set of circumstances that would appear we'd have. Okay, so there's your kind of one time that I'll mention it this week. I'll probably do another video next week and mention it again just to see where we're at. But in light of all this, we're all hoping for this two parallel paths to form again with our path, the path of people that are probably going to buck certain injection implements that are going to go into us, people that want less government, people that want a different money system to build guilds, to love each other and resonate with the earth. Yeah, create a regular class of modern day druids, basically, right? Built on ancient Templar principles. In order for that to occur, we have to have good circumstances for our path. The cybernetic future is the one. The two parallel paths we've been talking about and advocating for. What does that look like? Sonic Alchemy says, "Man, what a fucking take to end it." Totally agree. I'm not quite done yet, Sonic Alchemy. We're going to watch these videos too that indicate these two parallel paths a little bit more, lock in these concepts. Because I really didn't want to end this presentation. It's oddly paced because I didn't really know how to present the mRNA stuff like in a natural flow. Didn't want to end the video on a downer either. So I kind of like put some of the stuff I was going to talk about with the Aryans up front, put it on the end to make it flow with the NFL stuff. So that's what we're going to go into here. We're going to look at some of these people, Robert Sepper, Penny Kelly first, because she's talking specifically in some of her readings about the two parallel paths. Penny Kelly's a psychic. She is somebody who looks into the future. She calls these things look-sees. She looks like barely into the future and gets kind of like the entropic feedback to interpret for us with great accuracy. Whoops, am I still here? Hello? Testing. There it is. Something happened to my headphones, guys. Sorry about that. I hit a button I don't think I was actually muted for you. Honestly, I just think my stupid broadcaster board here. Anyway, she's accurate with this stuff. We're going to begin with her before I botch this transition any more than I can. Here she is.
That are there under the, what they're telling people is that they're learning to fight in a higher altitude winter, under higher altitude winter conditions. So they can fight India a little better because they've been getting wiped out. Because
I stopped it prematurely. She's talking about China. I wanted to capture the part where she's talking about China a little bit here so you guys can get that background. But anyway, thought I'd clarify that real quick.
they're just not conditioned for that. The Indians, I think, call them a bunch of snowflakes. So those troops are under secret standby orders to redeploy to the U.S. when Biden is inaugurated. And they're under those orders because the Biden camp does not believe that the military will follow orders to quell any kind of revolution or any kind of uproar that the people of the U.S. start. They need some other troops in place, and so that was kind of a surprise for me. I was like, the secret deployment, the secret standby orders to redeploy, that did not bode well for us at all. Next thing I saw was two paths. Americans have a choice of two paths.
Here it is, two paths. She's speaking specifically to the period of time we're living in right now, too, guys. She's speaking of the period between the 6th and the 20th of this month, which we're right smack dab in the middle of today here on the 11th. So two parallel paths. Here she's using this terminology, too. Interesting, right?
One of fighting to maintain our freedom to direct or to govern ourselves. And our own lives.
That's right.
And one of collapse into servitude and ruin. Both involve great hardship.
Yep.
And the caution that came with this one was, do not mistake collapse into servitude and ruin as the end of the story.
Yep.
It may be collapsing into fights that bring us or that maintain our freedom to direct and to govern ourselves. So we're still in December here.
So anyway, guys, I wanted you guys to hear it from her mouth. There's some interesting things afoot here with the paths that we have to take. And this is actually, for those of you who are also followers of the Phoenix Enigma channel, Corey, it's so funny. I get into conversations with him on the phone about these things, about the two parallel paths. And he's always telling me, Ben, how can you be so optimistic about the future? And I was like, and I'm always, every time I'm like, dude, why do you keep saying I'm optimistic about the future? I'm not optimistic at all. It's like her. I only ascribe correctly the work that lay in front of us. I'm identifying the work I have to do, and I'm okay with it. That's it. I'm not optimistic for the outcomes. I'm only optimistic for my own path because I can control me. Can't control other people. So any level of, happiness or joy or anything I express is usually just because I'm in tune with the path that I've chosen. Not because I think at large we're going to have kumbaya anytime soon. So it's something to keep in mind, not to look at all this like overly optimistically. That's not the way to look at it. You have to be realistic, realize that, there is going to be work. You're not going to escape that work. You either do the work or be enslaved. Those are your choices, right? And neither one of them is palatable to most people. Most people, especially in America, are used to the entertainment, used to the ease of just going to the grocery store is something we take for granted, everybody. I mean, this shouldn't be the case. Should at least have to. It's not hard to grow food, and back to the 50s, everybody did it. It wasn't so far ago that we all had these inherent to us. Hey, Derek just joined the stream. Good to see you. Hey, Kate Axe joined too. Unfortunately, you guys are coming in on kind of the tail end of it here. We're gonna go through a couple of more videos as it pertains to these Aryans that I've been talking about. But you guys missed the meat of this. You guys are gonna want to go watch the replay of this. I'll post it as quickly as I can. Fingers crossed the uploading platforms will process it and not delay me like they have in the past. But heck, this one's going straight up to theta. If it times out after a few days again and gives me all these errors, something's up when I in certain videos. Anyway, moving on. Here we are. Robert Sepper's study that really. Two videos that we're going to share with Robert Sepper here. One is more focused on the bloodline itself, and then another one that he did recently, which was focused on the Galactic Federation story that we've been talking about in the Discord channel pretty heavily. Here's some extra perspective to take into this year, and why also we can use some of the anthropological and archaeological information that he's done a brilliant job at decoding for us in his perspectives of the way the past was, to at least help us identify the other faction. So here it is. We'll let this play. This I might just let this play through with commentary until about the 22-minute mark. Actually, it looks like this looks like it's going to be about a 10-minute clip worth of me talking over here. So we'll get through this and I'll share with you why it's relevant.
Which is here. So with that understanding, let us continue.
Let me explain this chart too. Here is our original Aryan Martian forefathers. Everybody who's white, you can just, here you go. We came here from Mars. If you go far enough back, we're Aryans. Here you go. Robert doesn't say Mars. He just says Aryan. I'm taking the extra framework approach based on what the Templars are telling us through the steganography to ascribe. This is exactly what this is. Aryans, Aries, Mars, you get it, okay?
Confucius said, signs and symbols rule the world. not words and laws.
That's right.
And when I let go of that and I began trusting myself and my intuition and my experience and my insights, it changed everything. And I began looking at signs and symbols, and that's what opened all the doors. It's all right in front of us. It's there for everyone to see, but they don't know how to integrate, to relate, to put together the information to tell the real story.
Mm-hmm. I can guarantee you that this synthesis, this grand synthesis that you've managed to pull together, it's not being taught in the contemporary university.
No.
This, what we are about to present to you, ladies and gentlemen, is a paradigm buster. And the academic establishment are going to have to come in this direction.
So before I play this here, so we don't have to switch back and forth between these things, I'm gonna get my get myself pulled up. No, I guess I'm not going to. I was gonna see if I could. I don't have my rig set up with enough forethought to where I could have done that. I should have had it rigged to where I could put my screen in the bottom corner, but I will. So here's the setup, guys. This is I forgot to introduce her too. She's a scientist that Robert has I believe worked alongside in some way in the past. She is an academic who is an archaeologist and studying bloodlines to the chagrin of her cohorts. And these guys are. This is a great conversation to have as it relates to our bloodline conundrum as it goes. So I'll let it continue and go from there as I render more thoughts.
An example of these ancient signs and symbols that are no longer taught in academia, especially since World War II, is the swastika, which is a symbol disseminated during the Holocene by Aryans, who also spread agricultural civilization, domesticated animals, Indo-European languages, which we already looked at, and genetic signatures such as...
So I'm going to go back to the symbols here. You're going to hear him repeat a couple of these things, but let's take a look at all the swastikas. Remember what I said, Italians and Basques and Armenians, all of these people used the swastika. All of them have ancestry that goes back through the Aryan bloodlines. Remember when I was also saying the Italian Basque factions that penetrated France, that took up the fleur-de-lis, became bankers, that are that represent the Saints logo in the NFL, like we were just talking about.
European languages, which we already looked at, and genetic signatures such as blue eyes, as is evident in the many statues of pharaohs and other nobility from the ancient world.
Maddie Devine says other Cro-Magnons here in the chat. Yes, we're probably mostly all Cro-Magnons, Maddie Devine. Unfortunately, that's what we're determining here. Yeah.
Let's continue.
The interests behind the Jesuits, the entities that created the Jesuits during the Renaissance in Italy, it was none other than Alessandro Farnese, a Persian. From ancient Persia, his family came through Cappadocia in eastern Turkey, eventually to Italy, and they founded the first 10 Etruscan cities in Italy. And when those were razed, they destroyed them and they created the Roman Empire. The Romans, the Etruscans, the Holy Roman Empire, they're all Iranians, they're all Persians, it's all Persian blood. Italians are Iranians. Their practices, their beliefs, their food, their clothing attire. The Pope, for instance, wears a papal tiara dome, the papal dome, which is called the papal tiara. Well, that's what men in charge of tribes in Central Asia wear. They wear those very large domed hats. And some of the women do also if they're a leader of the community. And then the red slippers that the Pope wears, those are Central Asian slippers. You see them in India a lot and in Asia.
Yeah, you also see him on Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, don't you? Is this a signal to anybody? Here's some more Wizard of Oz riddles being solved. She doesn't even know she's saying it, but the Jesuits, of course, she's pointing directly at them. Who's casting these spells? Who are the men behind the mirror? Behind the mask or behind the curtain? There you go, the curtain. I botched that one. Anyway, I'll let her continue. She's riffing on some great stuff here, isn't she?
So there are many cultural ties and legends and religious practices that indicate over and over and over again that the Italians are really Iranians. Mm-hmm. And
boom, makes kind of sense, right? Right? The dark skin, whole thing, and the Iranians actually, well, the blue eye, back to the Aryan ancestry of it fits right in there too, alongside the dark skin and the interbreeding that happened. But you can see through her expose little chat she's having here, academic chat, the Jesuits, even before they were called Jesuits appropriately, I don't think they rebranded themselves until Lorenzo de' Medici, or actually it was, I think, late 1400s, rather, not the 1500s. Sorry, guys, I'm getting my dates off. It was late 1400s that they came in their current form. But their fuckery is the same.
Romania was named for the Roman soldiers, the Iranian equestrian nomadic warriors were brought to Romania, to Eastern Europe, and they were the Roman soldiers for the Roman Empire. So you see this fingerprint of Iranian DNA everywhere. And 14,000 years ago, DNA studies of a particular Iranian tribe indicate there was a mutation in the DNA.
While the conventional modern understanding of the origin of blue eyes is that it was a mutation that happened around Anatolia and spread from there during the Holocene, but based on genetic studies that I was involved in school that has not made its way into the media yet, I would argue that it was not a mutation, but belonged to a population descended from Cro-Magnon, which was rather tall and had light hair, similar to the 6-foot 6-inch Aryan mummies discovered in China, which interbred with the local populations, which were short, usually just under 5 feet tall, with dark hair and dark eye color.
We've talked about this before, where the Cro-Magnons, which are, more of the Aryan bloodline, intermixed with the admixture with Neanderthal and other native populations. And this is all what the missing link is. There was a war that took place between the Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals, and the Neanderthals got slaughtered. And this is actually, of course, what we talked about in Tao Tia's Secrets of the Sacred Serpent Bloodline book in our last presentation, or 2 presentations. So anyway, that shouldn't be news to anybody here, but thought it might, lock that into place from our previous presentations.
Which gave their offspring a wide range of height, hair color, and eye color.
The most extreme expression is red hair.
I want to speak to Maddie Devine, before she talks about the red hair regarding Dorothy's red shoes. Yes, you are correct. In the Frank Baum's novels, they were silver, and silver is more of an indication of the banking ritual that is on the top of that. But the current iteration of the red shoes, in my eyes, was changed for the film version and everything forward to indicate the Vatican control, to point to us from the Jedi, from the Templars, that the Vatican are the ones who are in control. So while the original is the case, the current iteration of it also tells us something specific to the time that we're living in rather than the original meaning, which also still applies as well. But anyway, that's a good point to bring up, Maddie Devine.
And blue eyes, light blue eyes. And then more moderate expressions are blonde hair, green eyes, hazel eyes, gray eyes. You see a lot of Afghanis with gray eyes. And so now you can walk around the Davis campus or get on a train or walk by some friends sitting on the steps of a building, and you can start talking to them, and you can tell they have Iranian blood. But it has to be from both parents. It's a recessive gene. So that really got me started. And
now it's my understanding that Aryan came from Iranian. That's the
right.
synonym. So
that's right.
It has migrated down into our...
Rather, Iranian came from Aryan, but, good point that he's making, but it's the other way around.
Most recent history, the history of World War II,
yes,
global depression.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing from you is that this extensive history that goes back millennia, right?
Yeah, thousands of years.
Thousands of years. Yes. We're witnessing I don't know if it's the end game or not, but we're witnessing the contemporary expression of this bloodline in 2016.
Yes.
And I don't know where you're going with this, but...
We're talking about a global network with one template carrying all of this out. And it's originates with those ancient Iranian bloodlines. And they have 10 bloodline families that sit on a council, and they're the ones who advise the Jesuits.
Here you go, guys. The Medicis, the Borgias, the Farnese, the Pamphili, the Conti. These are all the famous families of old that have controlled the Jesuit society's undergoings. Machiavelli was part of this. Lorenzo de' Medici was the one that during the American Revolution period really cemented in the Jesuit control here in the United States. So fancy that, huh?
The Jesuits work for the Iranian bloodlines, and the Jesuits were created by Alessandro Farnese, who became Pope Paul III in the Renaissance.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a game. This is not an academic exercise, neither for Loren or for myself.
No.
I am in their house. I am working in the belly of the beast. I have suffered, and I'm not going to talk about it too much today, the repercussions of asking certain questions about my own workplace, which is I'm entitled to do as a citizen, as a sovereign human being, as an academic, as an American. I'm entitled to do that, and I will exercise those rights to the best of my ability. But it takes research such as this, cutting-edge research such as this, that will provide us the intellectual, the historical, the analytical framework to understand what we are facing. Because so far, these people have been very good in veiling the truth and hiding it, because the Rockefellers own the University of Chicago. The Russell Trust runs Yale University. All these bloodlines control information, scholarship, and every single aspect, and sciences, of course, almost every single aspect of our lives that shape our world.
It traces back to the Jesuits. It traces back to Mesopotamia, to the Kabbalah and the Talmud, which were magic cult instruction books. And they recommended pedophilia in children, but they had to be under 8 years old. And
did you guys hear that? Of course, he beeped it out, but I think you can understand what he's saying there. The pedophilia in the kids that are 8 years old. This is the Talmud, by the way, not the Torah. The Torah is what contemporary Jewish people follow, which is basically the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, and everything we've covered extensively in this channel. Talmud is a much different text, and it's basically an instruction manual for all the annals of evil that you can put a society up to enslave them and give them legal authority from God to do it. And this is an Aryan invention for sure.
It's in the Kabbalah and the Talmud, and properly practicing Jews, I'm not including them. They follow the Torah.
Yeah, there she goes. She says
the Talmud and the Kabbalah are satanic.
The Babylonian Talmud. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are satanic cults.
The vast majority of people have no idea about the esoteric origins of the old religions, of which all major faiths stem from. Traditions that predate all world religions, even if most modern religious leaders themselves are unaware of this fact. This occult information is not central to rabbinical literature and largely irrelevant to most followers of the Torah, Bible, or Quran, and is part of the oral tradition, which is revered by secret societies and is attributed to Moses, but actually predates him as well.
That's right.
That said, the Hebrew language itself, which stems from Phoenician, as do many other languages,
stems from Phoenician, the Vikings, the Templars. These, you guys see all of the context and variety that all collapses back into the same conclusive arguments. They're busy. He's gonna talk here for a minute. They're just basically busy taking out these ancient texts in a confiscation raid from the police over in Israel. Is what those videos he was showing. Actual ancient Kabbalistic magical tomes. It's a magical war, guys. It always has been. Ever since the Aryans got here, ever since our forefathers got here on this planet, we've been fighting for no reason. No reason. Earth isn't a planet to resonate with fighting. You don't bring the Aryan energy here and ruin it. Earth's gonna kick you off eventually. So it's the bloodlines. It's the control of the Nazis and the Jesuits. So the question is, these bloodlines are, of course, as Robert's talking about in today's society, controlling us. What does that look like, right? Well, this is what we all talk about on the channel about the release of the secret space program. Like, what are those untold secrets that have been engineered under the guise of probably an agenda to get back to Mars and recolonize it? Remember, this is the home world of the Aryans. There's an impetus for them to get back there. I would actually have the Templars win their war. I'd rather assist the Templars in their war with the Jesuits if I'm going to take a side, like we began the whole presentation with, explaining my position on their neutrality or their calmness or their balance, rather than their preponderance of a force for good, other than to use good now to help counterbalance the evil. But I would have them as better galactic partners to trade with eventually, and not the Eagle faction. Go Serpents, right? Go Serpent. If you're talking about sports like Serpents versus Eagles, you go for the Serpents. But the Galactic Federation is the whole implication here, right? And I'm going to play part of Robert Sepper's video that he did on that about the Galactic Federation as it relates to, of course, our Nazi brethren. Unfortunately, they share the bloodlines of even the people who don't want to associate themselves with them. And here's how it's manifesting itself, and has really since World War II. Robert Sepper is talking specifically about another researcher here in this video that will elucidate on these topics.
It's the same shaped UFO that was spotted hovering over Los Angeles in 1945 for several hours in the famous incident the newspapers called the Battle over Los Angeles, where not only thousands of people witnessed the craft hovering in the air, but thousands of rounds of ammunition were shot at it, seemingly having no effect. Keep in mind, this was during World War II, and while the craft did not appear to be armed, it might have been to show off the technology in an effort to bring an end to the war. Probably the most famous contactee case was the one involving Betty and Barney Hill, an American couple who claimed they were abducted in a rural portion of the state of New Hampshire, where under hypnosis, Barney Hill not only described the alleged extraterrestrials as looking like an Irishman, but he used the word Nazi, saying that the occupants of the craft were Nazis.
Whoa, there you go, guys. So we're going to listen to his video, but there you have it. Red-haired Irish Nazi people, Aryans. It's not tough. Like, we're all Aryans, guys. Like, I just hate to break it to you. If you've got a beard and you've got white skin, you're an Aryan. To some level of genetic consequence down the line, woo, it's worth like, oh, isn't it good to live in the truth? Now you can heal from it. It's worth healing from. There's the fucked up past. We've been here for hundreds of thousands of years fucking this place up. And it's about time that we take it upon ourselves to atone for the mistakes of the past, and I don't know how else to put it. Here's what they say, though. It's not any more groundbreaking than what he's already told you, is what they're paraphrasing of what they said, but I'll let it play out just so you guys can hear the recording in their own words.
Say there, did you say it was 1,000 feet away?
Oh, no.
1,000 yards?
It doesn't look that far. It's very big. And it's not that far. And I can see it tilted toward me.
Tilted? What does it look like now when you say tilted? Did you see wings?
Looks like a big pancake with windows.
He said it looks like a big pancake with windows, if you can't understand it. That's this craft that they described with the windows.
And rows of windows.
Rows of windows.
And lights.
And lights.
Of not light, just one huge light.
Not lights, one huge light.
And rows of windows like a commercial plane?
Rows of windows. They're not like a commercial plane because they curve around to the size of this pancake. One person looks friendly.
One person looks for me.
He's friendly looking.
He's friendly looking.
And he's looking at me.
And he's looking at me.
Over his right shoulder.
Over his right shoulder.
And he's smiling.
And he's smiling. But
could you see him clearly?
Yes, I thought.
What's his face like? What does it make you think of?
What's his face like?
I think of a redhead Irishman.
I think of a redhead Irishman.
You saw him through this window, or you said there was a row of windows?
It was a row of windows. Just a huge row of windows. And an evil face.
An evil face in the row of windows.
On the... He looks like a German Nazi.
Looks like a German Nazi.
He is a Nazi.
He is a Nazi. So there you go, guys. I mean, it's not tough to decode any of this. If you just look at the preponderance of evidence that points to any of this stuff these days. The Nazis were building a secret space program. Why? Well, I suspect because of the reasons we're talking about today. They're trying to get to Mars first. They're trying to get back to their homeworld first. How long have they been marooned from it? Hundreds of thousands of years. Remember, it's like it hasn't been lost. It still stings. They still scorched the shit out of that place. And so I don't think they have any intention to atone for their sins of the past, though. I just think that they are going to... The Nazi Eagle faction wants to get back up there with terraforming technology, claim it again for their own. I'd rather the Knights Templar have the planet of Mars back than the Nazis, if that's the case, right? So, anyway, this will be the closeout today. We're gonna watch one more clip. Joseph Farrell's implications of the current situation of what the bloodline wars look like as it relates to all the fraud in the elections. He's a little bit more concerned than I am, or maybe not concerned, but despondent. He's a little bit more despondent with the situations of the world than I am right now. But it's worth a listen. We're going to let him chat here from the 8 minute 30 seconds on point, and he's going to talk about the bloodline coup and why we may see this war playing out with exactitude to our ritual decodes, and why year one 2021 space aliens or bust 2021. You haven't seen anything yet. We're just over a week in, and the speed at which things are unfolding is blistering. So, Dr. Joseph Farrell, what words of wisdom do you have for us, sir?
And economic philosophy. Some aspects of it strike me as being very, very similar in its historical analysis of the human condition to the Bavarian Illuminati, believe it or not. But I do tend to think that they have given the most thought, the most objective thought, to this current situation. I'm reading from the last chapter in this book, and I want you to listen carefully to what he says. This was written years ago. What he says in this chapter, and apply it to the current situation. Because what he's telling you is that the problem that we're facing is in part due to the American Constitution itself. And then I'm going to read from another book. Listen carefully. It was a bloodless coup d'etat against an unresisting Confederation Congress. The original structure of the new Constitution was now complete. The Federalists, by use of propaganda, chicanery, fraud, malapportionment of delegates, blackmail threats of secession, and even coercive laws, had managed to sustain enough delegates to defy the wishes of the majority of the American people and create a new constitution. Let me read that again. It was a bloodless coup d'etat against an unresisting Confederation Congress. The original structure of the new Constitution was now complete. The Federalists, by use of propaganda, chicanery, fraud, malapportionment of delegates, blackmail threats of secession, and even coercive laws, had managed to sustain enough delegates to defy the wishes of the majority of the American people and create a new constitution.
Of course, Joseph Farrell, the guys, is talking about one of our favorite events that we talk about here on the channel, the division of the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, the Articles of Confederation put into the new Constitution. He's not a libertarian. Joseph Farrell's not. I don't even know if I entirely am. I just agree with most of their fiscal policy and government policy. But the difference here, guys, is this is where the coup took place. This is as plain as I can put it. The Articles of Confederation versus the Constitution. I'm going to post this link in the description too, so you can always have this. It's a good reference point. It breaks the comparison T-chart into topics of levying taxes, federal courts, regulation of trade, executive branch, amending the documents, blah, 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 blah. And it compares and contrasts, of course, things we've talked about. Congress could request to pay taxes versus now in the Constitution, Congress has the right to levy taxes on individuals. You could only request under the original Articles of Confederation for the populace to put their money towards something that they believed in or wanted to pay for. No system of federal courts under the original Constitution or under the original Templars that founded the country, right? The Thomas Jeffersons and George Washingtons of the world, and it's the Alexander Hamiltons and James Madisons that turned us into this abomination of a country we are. No executive with power. President merely presided over Congress. No executive power. Whereas with the Constitution, it gave this executive branch with the checks and balances of the judiciary and legislature. It wasn't so complex initially, right? This is also where you get 13 out of 13 of of a vote needs to amend an article, 13 of the 13 original states, which would extend it today. If we were going to pass something, every one of the 50 states would have to agree. Tough to pass laws, right? Oh no, people would say, we can't pass any laws. Well, should it really be passed in the first place if not everybody agrees on it? That's the thing. It has to be an agreeable law. It should be very tough to pass laws. Raising an army, Congress could not draft troops and was dependent on states to volunteer the forces, where Congress can put into drafts and things like this. So the House of Representatives is the abomination of this. All of the current governing apportioned pieces of our society that have come into this evil, malformed cancer of what we deal with now goes all the way back to this original coup that Joseph Farrell's talking about. And it's prescient that he's talking about it in terms of getting out of us getting out of it today. So I'll let him continue.
The drive was managed by a core of brilliant members and representatives of the financial and landed oligarchy. These wealthy merchants and landowners were joined by the urban artisans of the large cities in their drive to create a strong overriding central government, a supreme government with its own absolute power to tax, regulate commerce, and raise armies. These powers were sought eagerly as a method of handing out special privileges to commercial groups, navigation acts to subsidize shipping, tariffs to protect inefficient artisans stampeded by national depression from foreign manufactured goods, and a strong army and navy to pursue an aggressive foreign policy designed to force the opening of the West Indies ports, the Mississippi River, and the Northwest. And to pay for all of these bounties, a central taxing power would be harnessed that would also assume and pay the public debt held by wealthy speculators. But government, by its nature, cannot supply bounties and privileges without taking them from others. And these others were to be largely the hapless bulk of the nation's citizens, the inland subsistence farmers,
who voluntarily, without force, just gave up their rights to, without a fight. Kadax asked, actually in the chat, good question, is this why Hamilton the musical is as promoted as it is? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I think it is. I think it is. Nothing more glorious of a day can happen than something akin to Aaron Burr shooting Alexander Hamilton dead can happen today. You just put whoever you want into the seat of Alexander Hamilton. I just think it's awesome. That was one of the best things that ever happened, was Alexander Hamilton dying by the hand of at the hand of a duel.
In Western Massachusetts, taxes to pay a heavy public debt owned by wealthy men in the East had produced Shays' Rebellion. Now, a new super government carrying out on a national scale the mercantilist principle of taxation, regulation, and special privilege for the benefit of favored groups, the few, at the expense of the bulk of producers and consumers in the country, the many.
Sound familiar, guys?
And while to acquire sufficient support, they had to purchase allies among the mass of the people, exempla gratia, urban artists, the major concentration of benefits and privileges would undoubtedly accrue to America's aristocracy. As part of the agreed-to division of the coming spoils, the Northern nationalists, though permanently abhorring slavery in a region where it was not viable and was being abolished, rather swiftly moved to protect and even encourage slavery in other regions in order to obtain support of the Southern nationalists and thus the Constitution. Remember the words of Lincoln: "My purpose is not to abolish slavery in the slave states. If I can save the Union by not abolishing slavery, I'll do it. And if I can save the Union by abolishing it, I'll do that too."
It puts Lincoln in a different light, doesn't it, guys? Everything he's talking about, we actually probably should examine Lincoln in a deeper context to get to the bottom of the man that was him. Because, you know, with what Joseph's saying, I agree with him. I don't really know what I think about Lincoln. He's, on one hand, seems like this virtuous, you cannot tell a lie type of a person. He seems to have taken the banks down by instituting the greenback system, gave them a whole host of trouble. but he also has these allegiance to the Union. And the Union, make no mistake about it, they were the ones that propagandized and instigated and encouraged all the slavery to happen. So the production for themselves and their consumption of the things as a result of the labor could take place up in the north. Oh, we don't want to see the slaves. We just want to take part in the spoils of the slaves. You think about it this way. Not so different than the Chinese Communist Party's agenda over the Uyghurs. When you think about it this way either, guys. Read Cliff High's blog post from today. It will bring you to tears. Just bring you to tears. So with that, I mean, these are the kind of the points I'm hoping to make. Don't trust your patriotism is what I'm saying, because your patriotism is mind control. Your patriotism means nothing. The Patriot Act, look what the Patriot Act got you if you're just going to use the terminology of that, right? Trust yourself, trust the individual sovereignty that you exhibit, and trust the spiritual connection that you have. Resonate in the Christ consciousness. Follow the path of the clues that are being laid out in front of us to solve for the riddles. Kate Axe is saying, like the myth of Jebediah Springfield, Lincoln. Oh, yes. You got to make the Simpsons reference. It's, yes, like the myth of Jebediah Springfield. Anyway, guys, what else do I got for you here to close out? I think I'll wrangle this. I was going to talk about the economic and monetary outlook for 2021, but I think I'm actually going to do a different video on that. Talk a little bit more about cryptos and we'll go from there on a different video. Maybe that's what I'll do next week. But I hope this makes sense. Watch again. I'm going to point everybody to the videos that will give a preamble to this. Really, if you are coming to this video for the first time and you haven't familiarized yourself with the concepts, watch this one on my Theta channel, New Jerusalem and Earth's Hidden Destiny, and then the Scottish Doug Riddle and the Serpent. Everything else is Patreon preview. You can follow me on my Patreon channel if you so choose. Starting at the $3 level, you'll get access to all of the video content, including this one, which Serpent Roots of Humanity and the Celtic ties to the Druidic Templars is a huge component to what we just talked about. The Antarctica Mystery and the World Reset, and of course another affirmation video on the Winter Solstice. These ones are all part of the same story arc that we're talking about right now in this video. And I'm incredibly grateful, as always, to all of you out there in the V-Cypher community. Continue to love each other. They're in the Discord channel. I love you all, and we'll keep plugging away at this mystery this year and figure out a better way toward building a future with our forthcoming guilds one of these days very soon. COVID pending, right? So, middle part of the video regarding the mRNA, of course, take with a grain of salt until you start seeing things happen that are conclusive to my conclusion. But it does look as if we are in for a ride of horrors related to that mRNA situation. So share that information willingly to people, and take to heart again my what I'm going to likely do. Talk about the AstraZeneca vaccine instead to save them some time, to bide time. Say wait for the AstraZeneca vaccine instead. Just at least do that. That's what I'm going to be doing with my loved ones, even though a lot of them are already lost to it. So hope the situation is better with all of you, and I'm grateful to have every single one of you in my life, believe it or not. So take it easy. We'll talk soon, and you can expect some more, probably DBZ and Cyberpunk streams on Theta later on in the week. I hope to complete the latter very soon, probably in the next couple days, so I can wrap that up and do another decode. Take it easy, guys.